Hello, hello. How is everyone? Hi guys, how is everyone? Anyone who has joined, can you please mention in the comments? We'll just get started maybe in 1 minute. We'll wait for a couple of minutes for people to join in. Otherwise, we'll get started. Cool, let's begin. I think let's start with the context of today's discussion. So let me share my screen. And yeah, the entire screen. Just let me know once it's visible. Just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen. Just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if yes. Cool. Let's get started. So, what is the context of today's discussion? Basically, Apple's Apple recently issued some threat notifications to certain MPs, and those MPs are leveling allegations against the government that you are doing state-sponsored cybersecurity attacks. So essentially, that is the context that Apple sent these messages to MPs, and this happened today. So essentially, today what happened is that multiple opposition MPs in India received messages from Apple warning them of state-sponsored attacks. And what that means is that they Apple feels that a government backed group is trying to hack into their phones without their permission. So while Apple has not confirmed like which country the attackers are from, but it's believed to be like a sophisticated group with the ability to target specific individuals. It can be government of India, it may not be government of India as well. So nobody would really know unless Apple discloses. And if Apple discloses, then the attackers would come to know how Apple is able to identify them. And then Apple wouldn't want to do that. So the attackers would want to steal like sensitive data and communication from these MPs' phones, which is the member of parliament's phones. So Apple has advised these MPs to take a warning seriously and take steps to protect the devices. And we'll get into what kind of steps is Apple telling these people to take. And we will get into it eventually. Any sort of questions till now or anything that you feel we should discuss which hasn't been discussed? Happy to sort of take those up. So let's see what is the intro to these state sponsored government attacks. What are these government attacks like? What do they do and all of that? So what is essentially government hacking? So government hacking is sort of like an unauthorized access to computer systems or networks by a government entity. Okay, so what happens is that governments has different objectives. Like, why do they hack? So essentially they want to steal sensitive data. Some governments might want to spy on their citizens, and some of them might even want to interfere in foreign elections, right? So I think that we saw in case of Russia interfering with the US elections in some way or the other. So that happened, I think, during the Trump sort of era. We will again get into it eventually during our conversations. And what are the implications of this government hacking? So government hacking can have serious consequences like data breaches, privacy violations, and sort of even to the lines of political instability, right? So this is pretty serious things that we are talking about. Okay. So let's look into various examples wherein these kinds of attack happened, right? So first is the Stuxnet virus, right? Wherein what was it? Basically, Stuxnet was a piece of malware that was used to attack Iranian nuclear facilities, right? So I think this was basically from the Russian government, if I am not mistaken. So I think Stuxnet is a malicious computer worm first uncovered in 2010, and the developer is someone called as Gen Digital, and it is essentially a Czech Republic. It's sort of headquartered in Tempe, Arizona, Prague, and Czech Republic. So the second is sort of the NSA's PRISM program, right? So again, NSA's PRISM program was a secret program that allowed the US government to collect data from major internet companies. Okay. Third is the Russian government's interference in the 2016 US presidential elections. So essentially, the Russian government interfered by hacking into the Democratic National Committee's computer systems and spread disinformation online. And finally, the one that happened today, which is essentially Apple tried to warn multiple opposition MPs in India that their iPhones are being targeted and someone is trying to remotely access them. Then coming to what is the future of government hacking, right? One of the biggest challenges that people are foreseeing right now is that it's very difficult to attribute these attacks to specific governments, right? And that makes it very difficult to hold these governments accountable for their actions and to deter them from hacking in the future, right? So that is where it is very difficult to understand which government is actually responsible for a certain attack, because if Apple reveals which government is responsible, then people would find it like the governments will find a way to understand how has Apple identified that, and they will try to refrain to do that in the future. And then what are the things that companies can do to actually control this government hacking, right? They can invest in research and development to develop new cybersecurity technologies, which they are doing. Second is that they should educate the public about the dangers of government hacking and how to protect themselves. This is on the company's front. But what can like governments do across the world? So they can develop new international norms and laws to govern this cyber warfare. They can even create a legal framework that criminalizes government hacking, right? But it might have to happen at a United Nations level, and maybe only one or two governments, if they agree to it, it might not work as per plan, right? So it has to be at a collective effort at a global level. Then third is that they have to share intelligence on government hacking threats with each other, and finally cooperate with other governments to investigate and prosecute government hackers, right? If let's say across the world everyone decides that North Korea is responsible for a lot of these attacks, they can maybe sort of blacklist North Korea in some way or try to co-attack the North Korean hacking team or something. I think there are concepts of blue team and red teams in cybersecurity, and I think they can leverage that concept to get that done. Finally, like how to protect yourself from this government hacking. A couple of things that people can do on their own. First is they can use strong passwords and enable two-factor authentication on all of the accounts, right? So while two-factor authentication is also not foolproof, but it adds to the security layer than what people have currently, right? Second is that there are a lot of phishing scams that happen, which is essentially a common way for hackers to gain access to a device. What they send is they send malicious links or emails or attachments. And if you open these attachments from unknown senders, you might potentially uh, face these phishing scams wherein they will be able to gain access to your device. Third is keeping your software up to date, which is like software updates regularly people sort of send, right? Which is like security patches. And most often than not, people tend to not update their software. But in these cases, if you're not doing it, you might be missing out on certain security patches, which are actually helping you protect from these known vulnerabilities, right? You should always try to use a VPN when trying to connect to public Wi-Fi networks, because public Wi-Fi networks are very susceptible to these attacks. Even I've heard of instances wherein you use a certain charging cable which is already available on public domain, maybe at an airport or a railway station, and that helps the hacker gain access to your system. So Using a VPN helps you encrypt the traffic from your side, and it makes it more difficult for hackers to intercept your data. So that is also there. And many times there are sort of allegations leveled against VPNs as well, wherein people say that VPNs are also accessing your data, and that might be a security risk if you're not using the right VPN from the right company. So you'll have to be mindful of that fact. Finally, there you have to be mindful of the information that you're sharing online. Right now, as we have become more social, people tend to share a lot of information about them online with, and that makes it very easy for people, these hackers, to target you. Like, they do social manipulation, they pretend to be a manager of yours or your relative or your parents, and then try to gain access to your device. Other things that people can do, which is, let's say, they can use a privacy focused operating system such as like Linux or Tails. These are more privacy oriented and make it more difficult. Not everyone can do it, but anyone who is more tech savvy can maybe move to a more privacy focused operating system. People can use a secure browser, maybe like Tor or Brave, right? And they can use encrypted email services like maybe Proton Mail or Tutanota. Again, the objective is to encrypt all the information so that hackers find it difficult to gain access to your information. Using a password manager will help, and everyone should advocate for government transparency, right? So that you held your government accountable. It is not only the opposition's responsibility to do that. Everyone as a citizen can actually tell their government that they're not okay with this, like monitoring. I think in China this is to a great extreme, and people have sort of become normal with this now. And because people are normal, the Chinese government finds it easy to actually do it on a regular basis, right? And everyone feels it's pretty normal to get into the radar of government. So finally, you can also support organizations that are working to protect privacy and cybersecurity, right? There are organizations like, I think, Electronic Frontier Foundation, there's the American Civil Liberties Union, Access Now, Privacy International, the Tor Project, right? There are a few of them. I can't say for sure the authenticity and how they're sort of using their funds and everything, but these are the few names that came up during my secondary research. Finally, I think we can discuss if there are further questions. I have sort of made a couple of questions myself, like wherein which might be some things like people tend to ask, right? Which are, let's say, what are the most common methods used by government to hack into computer systems and networks, right? So let's see what maybe Bard or ChatGPT has to say here, right? Let's see what are the responses of both of them. So phishing, I think we have already discussed, right? Wherein you are sent certain in emails, or you are sent certain website links which might appear legitimate, but they can compromise your security. Second is malware, right? Wherein they can deploy malware software such as viruses, trojans, or ransomware to compromise the target systems, right? And once the malware is there on your system, we can provide remote access to governments. Like, governments can steal data, disrupt operations. The third thing mentioned here is zero-day exploits, right? This is something I also don't know. So let's read through. Governments sometimes discover or purchase software vulnerabilities not yet known to public, 0 days, and use them to exploit target systems before they are patched. So these are ways or applications which are not yet known to public, and these are called zero-day exploits. Then there is spear phishing, which is a targeted form of phishing, which is often with highly personalized and convincing messages, right? So I think if someone is in the radar of the government where they really want information about that person, they might go to an extreme wherein everything will be so personalized and targeted that the person will never feel that they are being phished, right? Then there is water hole attacks, right? Which is, I let's read through, right? I also don't know again here. So attackers compromise websites that their targets frequently visit. When the targets visit these websites, they unknowingly download malware, allowing the attackers to gain access to their systems, right? So essentially, these are called watering hole attacks. So let's say Facebook, everyone visits, right? And somehow the government finds a way to actually compromise Facebook You might feel that you're downloading a attachment on Facebook, but essentially you are giving access to government through this data, right? These are called watering hole attacks. Then there are supply chain attacks, right? So government may compromise the supply chain by inserting malware or backdoors into hardware or software during the manufacturing process itself, right? So let's say a totalitarian government like North Korea might tell manufacturers to have malware in the hardware itself while they are providing it to the normal public, right? And that in that case, they have the control of the entire supply chain. The next is social engineering, wherein it is about manipulating individuals or organization to divulge sensitive information like passwords, etc., right? Security keys. So people try to pretend to be their manager or someone senior up the ranks or some senior government executive, right? And that can actually make believe people that it's fine even if they reveal certain sensitive information to these people, right? Then there is insider threats, right? So basically, government agencies might recruit like in employees or contractors who already have access to these systems, and then they also get access through them. There's the distributed denial of service attacks, right? Which is basically these attacks overload target systems with traffic to disrupt services and cause downtime. Essentially, you might want to attack a certain system, and that system might be resilient, but it might be resilient only till a certain amount of traffic, right? Maybe if 1 million people are coming to that system, it might be working fine. But if, let's say, government sends 100 million traffic to a certain website or application, it might be very difficult for that application to actually able to cope up with it. So that is called distributed denial of services attacks. Then there is an advanced persistent threats, right, which is APTs. Again, I don't know it, so let's read through. So APTs are long-term sophisticated cyber attacks aimed at specific targets. So they often combine multiple techniques, persistence, and stealth to achieve their objectives, right? So these are much more advanced, wherein they combine multiple techniques, like maybe social engineering with a spear phishing attack, right? Or a distributed denial of services with a supply chain attack, right? So these are more advanced in nature. Then there is espionage malware, which is like governments develop and deploy custom designed malware for espionage, which is specifically tailored to gather intelligence from targets. So this might be more a government might be able wanting to get information about their enemies, right? So that, and maybe the vice versa is also happening, right? So these are called espionage malware. And finally, there's a network and traffic analysis, wherein monitoring network traffic and analyzing patterns can help identify vulnerabilities and potentially exploit them. So they might see how a certain system behaves over a certain period of time, and using that information they might be able to understand when is the right time to actually uh, build into a phishing attack or a social engineering attack, right? There might be certain, it's sort of like a gatekeeper, right? There might be certain times that the gatekeeper is asleep, right? So that might be the perfect time for a thief to actually enter into the system. Similarly, network and traffic analysis is something similar. So other things, by the way, anything else you want to discuss that we haven't covered? Happy to sort of take questions. So who are the most common targets of these government hacking attacks? Let's see again what ChatGPT or Bard has to say here. There are a few that I think we missed out here, by the way. So I think we didn't discuss man in the middle attacks, which is basically these attacks intercept communications between two parties and insert malicious code into the traffic. For example, a government hacker might set up a fake Wi-Fi hotspot in a public space, and when users connect to the hotspot, their traffic is routed through the attacker's machine, which allows the attacker to ingest malware into their traffic, right? So this might be another kind of attack, which is called the man in the middle attacks, basically. So let's move on to now who are the most common targets of government hacking attacks, right? So these might be critical infrastructure, right? So maybe governments try to target energy, transportation, water, wastewater, financial resources. So essentially all the important sectors of the economy. Any enemy of a government, if they want to target that, then essentially the entire country might suffer a lot, right? If there is no electricity in the entire country because of a technological failure, that might create chaos in the entire country, right? So critical infrastructure is that part which will be one which hackers would want to target the most amongst these government hacking attacks. They might want to target military and defense organizations, right? Because they might want to steal sensitive information such as intelligence reports or weapon development plans, right? This will help these people sort of governments gain access to in geopolitical conflicts, right? Right now, Israel and Palestine are happening. If Israel knows what is Hamas's next move, or Hamas knows what is Israel's next move, it will be very useful information for both of them, right? Then there are government agencies which are common target of hacking attacks, again because they have sensitive data like classified information, etc. Businesses, because government might also want to steal certain intellectual property or trade secrets or certain customer data. I think this we saw in case of Facebook as well, wherein not Facebook but certain internet companies customer data was being collected through NSA's Prism program, right? So these kind of things are already happening in the past, right? Then there are non-profit organizations, right? They might want to gather intelligence on their activities and might want to disrupt their operations, right? So I think a couple of them we have already discussed from BART, but then there might be political entities like opposition MPs, as we discussed. There is an election coming up. People might want to target these political entities because that will actually influence the electoral performance, right? Government might want to target enforcement and intelligence agencies, right? There might be a certain kind of case going on against a certain important or powerful person, and they might want certain information which is already available with law enforcement so that they might be able to mold the case, right? Anything can happen in a totalitarian government, right? Research and development organizations, financial institutions, again this is more critical infrastructure that it can, if people are able to target the financial institutions, can disrupt the entire economy, right? Media outlets and journalists, again journalists have already been targeted and there have been news about this, right? Wherein because they are the people who are disseminating this information, and governments can suppress reporting on specific issues, right? Or uncover sources where people are getting or journalists are getting this information from. Human rights and activist groups, I think utilities and energy companies, aerospace and aviation industry, telecommunication, all of this is critical infrastructure. Even healthcare organizations or foreign diplomatic missions, again, they have sensitive information around diplomatic efforts of people or academic institutions as well. So these are a couple of them. Looking at other questions that might arise, right? So let's say, what are the ethical and legal implications of government hacking? Like if, let's say, at a UN level, people have to decide that, like, let's have a policy around this and let's try to tackle this at a UN level. Would governments want to do that, or would they have some kind of a issue around that, right? So the ethical culture is one is definitely privacy, right? That if customers advocate that they want privacy, government might have to sort of move in that direction. Second is security, right? And if governments are hacking into system, they are introducing vulnerabilities that can also be exploited by other attackers, right? So that can actually make it easier for criminal groups to steal data and disrupt operations. And then it can also reduce trust in the system, right? Government hacking can actually erode the public trust that governments might have built over a period of time, especially in democratic countries, and that might cause them elections as well. Maybe that's not the main issue at hand, but that might become an issue in the future. Then there is domestic law, right? So in the United States, there is a Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which prohibits individuals from accessing computer systems without authorization. But I don't know if governments are also fall under this law, right? And then there is international law, like there is a United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution on the right to privacy in digital age, wherein governments have a duty to respect and protect the right of privacy of individuals, including in the digital sphere. And I think this also happened in case of like Ashwini Vaishnav, which actually came in and gave a put up a tweet wherein they are telling Apple to sort of get into it further, and they might work with Apple to see if it is the right way, because essentially international pressure can also come into the government, right? So these are a few. Then I think this is what we discussed. There might be human rights concerns. Uh, what else? What else? Let's see. So, what could be the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in sort of government hacking? Let's see what we get into, because this is something that has sort of potential to actually change the entire attack of hacking itself, right? Because now systems will get intelligent by themselves, right? So that might mean that governments don't have to work as hard to get information that they used to do at some point in time, right? So government agencies can employ AI and ML to bolster their own cybersecurity defenses, right? So AI-powered security tools can analyze vast amounts of network data. They can identify anomalies, potential threats, than more quickly than human analysts, and it can actually improve the accuracy of intrusion detecting systems, reducing false positive and enhancing the ability to identify advanced threats. I think this might work in benefit or counter benefit of the government and the companies as well, right? So companies like Apple might also be using these AI and ML to actually trigger these threat related communication to these MPs, right? Even phishing detection can be done by AI and ML. Predictive threat analysis, they might be able to analyze historic data and identify patterns, right? Then there is automated malware analysis, enhanced espionage, automated target selection, right? This could also, like, you can use it in a negative way, wherein you are able to specifically target victims based on specific criteria such as vulnerability, importance, or potential attack, right? And this entire attack techniques can be automated. So as and that we discussed, like zero-day vulnerabilities which like can be exploited here. And finally, AI powered chatbots and conversational agents can also do social engineering and spear phishing, right? So, and then there are certain evasion techniques that can basically, the system might not be able to understand that it is under attack, right? And that making attribution more difficult. So these are a few. And then essentially, let's see, maybe uh, let's see what are the most promising sort of new cybersecurity technologies that can help us protect from this government hacking. What is the solution, right? What are the solutions or technologies that are coming up in the future, right? Let's see what is in store for us here. Saving some time, maybe here it's much faster. Okay, so I think the first one is AI and ML. Like we discussed, that it can actually help a lot in real-time threat detection, having an automated response, and identifying patterns of cybersecurity as well. Then there is a zero trust security. What is that? So essentially, the zero trust model assumes that no one, whether inside or outside an organization, should be trusted by default. So there should be zero trust. And then it requires a strict identity verification as well as continuous monitoring, which can help prevent unauthorized access even in case of government hacking attempts. So right now what we do is that in our organizations as well, we see that in certain cases senior people in the organization have access to really important systems, which wherein you are trusting those individuals. But if in case of a zero trust security model, no one inside or outside the organization has to be trusted. I think this is also something that happened in case of FTX, right? That entire collapse, wherein certain individuals within the organization had access to super important systems and they were able to move funds. In case of a zero trust security system, nobody in the organization would be trusted by default. Then there is a cyber threat intelligence, right? Wherein real-time threat intelligence services provide information about emerging threats, vulnerabilities, and attacker tactics. So subscribing to such services can help organizations stay ahead of the evolving government hacking techniques, right? So there's more like a continuous knowledge enhancement that people have to do. Then there is an endpoint detection and response, which is EDR solutions monitor endpoints for like endpoint devices for suspicious activities and provide the ability to respond to threats quickly. They can help identify and neutralize government sponsored hacking techniques, right? So this is called endpoint detection and response. So these are EDR solutions that monitor these endpoints for suspicious activities. And again, after the advent of AI and ML, this might become more uh, robust, right? Then there's something called a secure access service edge, which is the SASC combines network security and wide area networking capabilities into a single cloud-based service, which enables organization to secure remote access and improve network visibility, which is crucial in defending against government hacking, right? So essentially, what I understood from this is that the network security and WAN capabilities are sort of combined into a cloud-based service. And because it's a cloud-based service, organizations are able to secure remote access and by that way improve the network visibility. Multi-factor authentication, at least two-factor or maybe a few more, again adds an extra layer of security. So we should always opt for two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication whenever we can. There are deception techniques, right, wherein there are certain decoy attacks and networks to mislead and divert attackers, wherein again it is like the military tactics, wherein you make believe the enemy that you are present in a certain location while majority of your uh, army is present in a certain other location. Similarly, like deception techniques like those could help us in the future, or they might already be helping us, right? Then blockchain for security, right? Blockchain technology can enhance security by providing a decentralized, tamper resistant ledger, verifying and tracking data and transactions, right? So essentially, what happens is that again, if there is a centralized access, attackers can attack. But if it is decentralized, it will be secure, able to secure critical data, and no one outside the blockchain can actually change data on the blockchain because other people will be able to understand that, or with whosoever is present on the blockchain, right? Then there is secure cloud services, right? Which is cloud providers often offer advanced security features, making it easier for organizations to protect their data and applications. So leveraging these cloud security services can enhance protection against government hacking. These are more on the lines of AWS and Aajao of the world. They have secure cloud services. Then there is quantum safe encryption. So as quantum computing becomes a reality, traditional encryption may become vulnerable, right? I recently saw something like quantum computing can 10x the capabilities of already, maybe not even more, the capability of existing encryption techniques, and all the existing encryption methods that we're using after quantum computing becomes like has a scale, all of them will fail. And once that happens, we should be able to withstand quantum attacks, ensuring data remains secure, right? So we should have a quantum safe encryption going forward. Threat hunting. So what is that? Proactive threat hunting is an approach where security teams actively search for signs of malicious activity within their networks. Okay. This can help detect government hacking attempts before they can cause significant damage. So this is like more on the lines of the bug bounties of the world, wherein proactively people try to find security vulnerabilities and try to fix them. Then there is hardware-based security, wherein trusted platform modules and secure hardware enclaves such as Intel SGX provide hardware-based security to protect sensitive data and keys. There's the security automation and orchestration, which is essentially security automation streamlines response to security incidents, while orchestration enables the coordination of multiple security tools. These technologies can help organizations respond more efficiently to government hacking attempts, right? So what essentially will happen is that I believe this is more like a process, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, that security automation streamlines response to security incidents while orchestration enables the coordination of multiple security tools. So there are multiple security tools and there has to be process defined, which will help organizations respond more efficiently. Behavior analytics. Behavioral tools can monitor user and system behavior, again identifying anomalies and potential threats based on deviation from normal patterns. And finally, the education and training, which is where I also felt this is something that all of us should be aware of, and then basis that we can move forward. So cybersecurity awareness and training for employees can actually help prevent these government hacking attempts, as well trained individuals are less likely to fall victim to things like social engineering and phishing attacks. Let's see if Bard has something else that we have. I think not, no, not really. So I believe we have covered a good ground. If there's anything, please put it in the comment section. Otherwise, I feel we have covered a decent amount, and I'll like plan to keep it short for now. And anything else that we can learn as a community, you can put it in the comments, and I can go through the comments, respond, or maybe other people in the community can respond, and then we can move forward. I think thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in. And I would be sort of making a move now. Thanks a lot.